Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 55 of Be With Me. We're talking about spiritual gifts. And then he goes into the love chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. You're familiar with it. I'm going to read the verses that we're doing today. Love is patient and kind. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 13:4. You've heard this before at weddings and stuff. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. This is in the context of spiritual gifts. And then he says, but spiritual gifts are given for the common good, and the gifts must be motivated and empowered by love. And he, just before this yesterday's passage, talks about if you have a gift, but you don't have love, so a gift plus no love equals just noise, or it equals nothing, or it equals no gain. So love has to be part of the equation as we use our spiritual gifts. Okay, so let's talk about love. The word here is agape, and it's specifically not a romantic love, even though when I go to a wedding and they do read this, and you'll see by the time we get to the end of this is like heaping coals on the bride in groom's head as you load all this high requirement kind of thing is about what love is. And of course they're going to fail it by the first night of their wedding, of their marriage, and every day subsequent to that. But here's the thing, it's not specifically about a wedding and romantic love. It's in the context of the church that God is giving these spiritual gifts to the church, and the gifts are supposed to be motivated, empowered by love. Okay, so love ultimately gives gain. So let me define what the Greek word agape, which is the word for love here, is. It means a strong, non-sexual affection and regard for the other person and their good, not my good. And therefore it's forfeiting my rights and privileges on another's behalf. Now, when you think about this, this is the most godly thing, capital G and small g, that we can do. God is demonstrating He is demonstrating love by all these things. He's demonstrating his love by creation. And then common graces. He gave you the sunshine this morning and the heartbeat this morning. And then he sends his son. And then he makes, in John 14, he says he's going to indwell us, make his home with us. And don't forget, he gave himself sacrificially for us. And then he walks us in sanctification as he disciplines us. And then in 1 John, it says that God is love. And this is a command that we ultimately have to love one another in the body of Christ. It's part of the one another's. It's we're supposed to be loving our enemies. We're supposed to be loving by our service. We're supposed to be speaking truth, bathed in love. And to who? Well, it's not to things and hobbies. Somebody said if it doesn't breathe, then it doesn't matter. So this is primarily, or I guess exclusively, I can't think of a good example that wouldn't be breathing. If it doesn't breathe, it doesn't matter. In other words, this is about people. So I want to talk about, let's define terms just a little bit, because it gives these similes. Love is patient, kind, does not envy or boast, not arrogant, not rude, not insisting on its own way, not irritable, not resentful. So let's talk about those things. So patience, this doesn't mean standing in line at the Chipotle where you're going to get some, big prize at the end of the line and a big burrito or something like that. This is to remain tranquil while waiting when it's tough. So it's bearing up under provocation. So it's tempered. It's a tempered spirit during trying circumstances. Maybe bearing up when we don't see the end. That's what patience is. So that's a pretty high call. How about envy? Envy is this zealousness for what others possess. It's in the Ten Commandments. It's in their possessing their advantages. It's coveting. How about boasting? Well, that's when you think or speak highly of yourself, not arrogance. Well, that's where you're puffed up with pride, puffed up with self-importance. How about rudeness? That's when you're behaving disgracefully or ugly or indecently. Insisting on your own way, that's dealing with your will of insisting and forcing it. How about irritability? That is being enticed, or our emotions being stirred up. Again, it reminds me of the patience when it's difficult. And then finally, this is the one I wanted to camp on today, is resentful. I'm not sure why they translated this, because it's three words. It means to count up wrongdoing. It means to keep count of things. It's the math part of your outrage. It's the memory that we have of taking into account and counting up the wrongs suffered against us, as opposed to, letting that part go. So it's our tendency to keep count of the wrongs done against us. So here's what love is. There's more love. This is going on for a couple days, because there's so many ways that he's describing love. So here's what I want to say today, is what all these things are saying is you are worth doing it right for. You are worth loving this. In other words, these actions that love is trying to do is betraying our value. It's showing our value of the other person. But there's headwinds here, and the headwinds are very prominent. That is, it's going to be hard. So is it going to be hard to love people in the church? Absolutely. That's what this passage says. And if you want to read it at a wedding, is it going to be hard to love the person that you're married to? Absolutely. Why? Well, because there's going to be some trying circumstances, and it's going to lead you to, it's going to provoke you, and you may be tempted during that. You may be lacking something. You may have a bad tongue that wants to boast. You may have a heart that wants to lean towards pride. You have a body that may want to lean towards bad behaviors. You may be rude in that your will is going to insist on stuff. You're going to be irritable, and your emotions are going to be stirred. And then finally, you're going to be resentful. That is, you're going to have a temptation to keep track of all the wrongs. So here's what this is. It's a high call to love, saying you're worth it. You're worth loving when it's hard, when it's headwinds. To summarize this chapter so far, one of my friends in a Bible study said, once we came to understanding that we've done here today, he says, this is a horrible chapter, but at least it's short. So I'm going to leave you with that today, the love chapter. It's a horrible chapter, but at least it's short. Thanks for listening. Come back tomorrow for more love.